Everyone, Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Wednesday, December 27th, 2023. We're between Christmas and New Year's. Ray McGovern joins us now. Ray, a pleasure, my dear friend. Thank you for joining us. What role, if any, does the CIA play in the slaughter by the IDF in Gaza?
The CIA has all kinds of technical information to share with the Israelis. The Israelis are treated a lot better than the other the Five Eyes, if you will, because they're a close ally, in quotes. The CIA will do whatever Jake Sullivan tells them to do, speaking on behalf of the president. That's the way this is all set up. So you can be sure that not only are those 200 or 2,000 pound bombs being used with the approval of the Pentagon, the intelligence, such as it is, that the Israelis need, they've got their own, of course, is provided by our intelligence agencies, including the CIA and DIA.
You used a phrase, I just want you to explain it to our viewers. The Five Eyes, that's EYES, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And what does it mean? Who or what are the Five Eyes?
Well, they're all white and they're all English speaking. It's a relic of World War II. We got together real closely with the UK, with Canada, and with Australia, and with New Zealand. And out of that cooperation came a technical cooperation where we share almost everything, of a technical intercept nature or some kind of ELINT or SIGINT or whatever, electronic or signals intelligence, with these other four people, and they do the same for us. Now, the Germans have been trying to get into this exclusive club forever. They've not been allowed in. The Israelis, they don't have to get in. They get the same treatment. So the Israelis are in receipt of our very best intelligence because Biden told Jake Sullivan to tell Bill Burns, do it. And as Bill Burns, a new cog in the wheel, as he did on sabotaging Nord Stream, he turned to his folks and says, can you do it? Do it.
Does the CIA have boots on the ground physically assisting in the slaughter in Gaza? Are there American CIA, either contractors or officers, agents, correct my terminology, physically present in Gaza?
I would say almost certainly no, and that is partly because the Israelis wouldn't want them there. This is an Israeli game. They're going to do these things by themselves. They don't want anybody second guessing them or reporting back to Washington this or that carnage. So I doubt whether there are any CIA or other officers, or agents in Gaza or anywhere near Gaza at this point helping the Israelis.
The reason I'm asking is because 2 days ago, the IDF murdered a woman holding her baby in a Roman Catholic church in Gaza. And I'm wondering what a CIA person, agent or contractor would have done if they would have been in a position to stop that, report it, do something. It's hard to be indifferent over a slaughter like that.
It is. And of course, that was a sniper. Got right between the eyes, okay? Proudly killing these people. So, you don't need the CIA to do that kind of thing. The Israelis have been doing that forever. And I have one fairly good friend in the village of Nabi Saleh in the West Bank who had a rifle shot from a sniper right through the top of his head, killing him instantly.
Was he engaged in violence?
No, he was demonstrating before a spring that had been confiscated by the settlers. Actually, a delegation from Veterans for Peace was there later at the same spring, and we were attacked by the same settlers. And as we escaped climbing up the hill back to the little village, I heard shots that I hadn't heard before since 30, 40 years. Those were rifle shots. I said to my younger comrades, Matt Ho and Mike, I said, look, does that sound like that's rifle? Yeah, get down, McGovern. For God's sake, get down. So that was the same kind of rifle shot that did this person. And he was the uncle of most of the people in this house that we were staying at.
Can the Israelis succeed in wiping out Hamas?
You know, Judge, it boggles the mind, doesn't it? I mean, it's not Hamas, it's the Palestinians. 2.3 million of them. Now, there are lots of Hamas in interspersed there, but the Israelis can't tell the difference. What they want to get rid of is all 2.3 million. And I can't, it's incredible. But what they'd like to do is push them out. They've said as much, push them out into Egypt, into the Sinai, to be welcomed by Western powers who might give them succor and might give them asylum or give them a new place to live. They want them out of there. They want no Palestinians in Gaza. And you don't have to believe me for that. Check with Netanyahu and his lieutenants. That's what they're saying. And they're saying this is not going to happen this month. It's going to take several months. So is the U.S. going to do the right thing on this? Are we going to cut ties with this genocide or not? That bothers me greatly, as you know, but that's the question here because they can't do it without us.
Might there be American agents that are undercover on the ground in Gaza?
There could be, but I doubt it. We don't need them. The Israelis are showing us pretty much everything. Everybody's got an iPhone now. What we would hopefully have are some undisclosed agents in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv with good ties to decision makers. That too is a challenge because we never want to get the Israelis upset with us. So there were restrictions on recruiting people like that. But, it's not necessary to have that. We know what the game is, and we should stop it. And we should stop it sooner rather than later. Before the Egyptians are browbeaten into taking, well, just take a 500,000 of them, and maybe somebody else will take the other 2 million or whatever,
Who's the principal American negotiator or communicator with the Netanyahu government? Is it Bill Burns, the director of the CIA, or is it Amos Hochstein, the Israeli-born former member of the IDF, now an American citizen and high-ranking in the U.S. State Department?
He's a contributor to the intelligence, such as it is, but it's really Blinken, Secretary of State, and Jacob Sullivan, who are running this thing. Now, when Netanyahu allowed one of his retinue, one of the 5 decision makers, it's his name, Dermer, he was here yesterday. Okay, and he talked to Sullivan, and then he talked to Blinken. I think he may have talked to the president. What came out of it? Zippo, that I can see. The Israelis on the same day indicated, no, we're in this for the duration. It's going to take many months. Don't even think about us creating a ceasefire or a pause. Is
there any realistic expectation that Joe Biden would either for political or moral reasons pick up the phone and say, Bibi, stop it, or you're not going to get spare parts. You're not going to get 2,000-pound bombs. You're not going to get anything.
I hate to say this, Judge, but I don't think moral values enter into this. I think that's all rhetoric. Now, political,
Ray, am I naive? These people are human beings. The president claims to be a Roman Catholic. He must understand the natural law. He must respect the right to live.
President Biden, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have this thing here. You get a fancy Jesuit to officiate at the inauguration, and then they slink back into their monasteries or the seminaries. They don't say word one about the moral issues here. They should be speaking out and say, Joe, this is wrong. Stop it. And he could stop it, but they don't. It's the same as in World War II, where the church could not find its voice, whether it was the Catholics or the Lutherans. They could not find their voice, and they allowed this thing to continue. It's abominable in my view.
Okay. Switching gears to Ukraine, because a friend of ours, I won't mention his name until we get to the end of this segment,
I've been forewarned.
right, gave an interview to The Sun, which is an Australian newspaper owned by my former boss, Rupert Murdoch, for whom I have a lot of regard. He employed me for 24 years. And this person that we know, a former veteran, a high-ranking veteran of the CIA, said, the Russian president will be overthrown in a black swan palace coup. Now, I can't imagine that you have spoken to this person, but do you have any idea what he's talking about? A black swan palace coup.
He's making it all up, Judge. It wouldn't be so bad if he was just making it all up, but this is mischievous, okay? This gives people who want to hang in there in Ukraine some reason to believe, oh, it's going to be all right because Putin's on his way out. He's going to have a black swan wafting over him, and all of a sudden he'll be gone because he has great health problems. Did you know? Now, anyone who looks at Putin giving these addresses or watches him preside over decisions on Ukraine, and he just did 2 days ago, will know that that's just a bunch of hooey. What you have here is a long-standing chief of the clandestine operation part of the CIA. They don't care much about the truth. They're just propounding these rhetoric things to make sure that if they're in business, their business will continue to collect on these things. I don't say Jack is doing this for pecuniary reasons, but he's not really connected with the real situation. And it's sad to see, because if it were laughable only, then I'd laugh. But it's mischievous because it gives people the idea that he worked for the CIA for 30 years. Maybe he knows something we don't.
What does the phrase "black swan" mean in intelligence?
Well, it goes back to medieval, actually back to the times of Homer, and a black swan was something that was impossible because there weren't any. Okay. Something that was impossible. So if something arrived that it just was possible. Now, black swans were discovered in Australia. Okay. And then it became, really, a couple of centuries ago. So that became sort of possible. And then people said, well, a black swan would be something that looked impossible, but it wasn't impossible. And we should have known it all along. So that's what these expressions come to mean today, in my understanding. And, you don't have to explain it if you're Jack Devine and have several decades of clandestine experience. This points up the fact that, it's the clandestine people who are running the show here. It has to be people like Jack that's been telling Bill Burns, the Russians, well, he says it in this article, the Russians are really taking it on the chin. They're really losing. Hello. No responsible analyst, even if he was lying, could make a decent case that the Russians are losing in Ukraine.
Quote. Now, the piece that I have is from the New York Post, which is an article about the article in The Sun. But it does quote our friend. Quote, Putin could disappear tomorrow, and I wouldn't be surprised if some element in the government had decided they were going to take some executive action. Is there any known evidence to support that claim?
No, there's no evidence to support that claim at all. When you mention that this started in Australia, this is a textbook case. So it goes in the Australia paper, and then you tell the New York Post, oh, hey, look at this story. And the New York Post, because of its own interest, publishes it. In other words, you're not supposed to do propaganda in this country, and that's what Jack is doing. You do it outside the country, it comes back, and oh, wow, the Post is picked up. Nobody looks at where it came from, Australia. It's a big story. And, the Post is not very reliable on these things.
Quote, Putin has become increasingly unpredictable and dangerous. Is there any evidence to support
No
that?
evidence at all. As a matter of fact, he'd become very predictable. As you know, Judge, a lot of us were wondering whether he's going to go all the way to the Dnieper River, seize
Right.
even more than those provinces. And it was an open question. Now he's made it a closed question. He's going to attrit and attrit and attrit some more. He's in no big hurry, even though he himself acknowledged that his military people said, why don't you go ahead? Why don't you go home? Go ahead, Vladimir. He's going to go slowly. Even Odessa, which he made a big point of saying is a Russian city. Everybody knows that. We know that. Even that, in my view, is up for negotiation, because I don't think Putin wants a real hostile nation just to the other side of the Dnieper River. I think he wants to have a Ukraine that's reasonably doesn't have this revanchist sort of thing and has an outlet to the sea. Okay, because
Right.
without Odessa, it's a landlocked farm for the rest of Europe. That's what Ukraine becomes. So even though he mentioned Odessa, he's done that before as a signal, I think, that look, we could talk about this sort of thing. And, we could talk about Odessa as well. I don't think he has any strict plan to take Odessa. It will take several months before that comes into play.
One or two more questions about the comments in this article in the Sun, and then I want to talk big picture with you. The Russian president is continuing to throw his troops into a meat grinder. According to McGregor and Ritter and Larry Johnson, it's the other way around. It's the Ukrainians that have been in the meat grinder. And our friend believes the tyrant's popularity will continue to drop as the war goes on. The last poll had him between 82 and 86%.
Well, it could drop to 80. Meat grinder. Well, Jack has heard that. Meat grinder. Oh, doesn't matter which side it applies to. Let's use it. I mean, this is in the area of public propaganda, sort of trying to blend in with the indigenous neocons in our government. And Jack he runs his own consulting thing. I wouldn't rule out the fact that he gets a lot of business from people who would like to see a continuation of this war. So it's kind of difficult to say that, but a lot of guys do this kind of thing. Jack is a smart guy, but he's smart on clandestine things that have nothing to do with analysis or evidence.
Do you think that the American neocon leadership has recognized that their project in Ukraine has been a dismal failure? And might this kind of a statement from our friend have been intended to divert attention from that failure to their perception of Putin as a monster?
I think that could be part of it. In answer to the first part of your question, I think they have to understand that they have lost, that the troops that are being decimated are the Ukrainians, that there's great dissension in the Ukrainian government as to whether they should try to raise 500,000 other troops or whether they should do something different. But there's an election coming up, Judge. That means everything in Washington. What's the best thing to protect us from being seen to have lost this war in Ukraine? Well, we'll do whatever that takes. Now, as I mentioned before, it's worth mentioning again. There's going to be some idiot in the Pentagon or in the White House who will say, look, Mr. President, the only way we can show Russia that we need business is to use one of these little mini nukes. Now, they're only about the 10th of the size of what we did in Hiroshima. So let's do that, and then they'll stop, and then we won't absolutely lose the election, and then we can deal with the rest of it. Oof. I fear that's likely to happen, and likely, just my saying it puts bristles up the back of my neck. But that's the only solution they have to prevent losing next year during the election.
Don't they foresee what that would start?
I don't know. you have these admirals and these generals saying, it's an arrow in our quiver. We can use it. Doesn't necessarily mean things will escalate out of control. I mean, you have to get into the mind of these military leaders who have been trained that we have to use this on occasion, and we may have to use it. They don't look at things in a dispassionate way. And I dare say, with the politics involved, Jacob Sullivan and Tony Blinken have a lot to protect. They have a huge personal stake in not losing this election and not being susceptible to being prosecuted by the guy who comes in.
The chief of the military, General Zaluzhny, had a press conference over Christmas weekend, and said you used the number a few moments ago, we need 500,000 more troops. They've lost 500,000 troops, dead or disabled. And President Zelensky backed it up and said, by the way, we need 13 billion to feed, clothe, arm, and train these troops. This is fanciful. Where on earth are they going to get 500,000 people and $13 billion?
Well, Judge, what's really interesting, and I've seen these interviews over the weekend, is that it was Zelensky that said we need 500,000 more troops. Zaluzhny said, I didn't mention any number. We need some more troops, but I recruiting that's going to be 500. I didn't say that. Okay. Now, there's a big battle royale going on between these Ukrainian leaders now as to who said what. But Zaluzhny and Zelensky were at odds on this very important issue from the beginning 2 days ago. God knows where they'll be today. But you're right, 500,000, even if they start recruiting at age, where they say 22 now, and 17-year-olds are eligible, I don't see where they would get green troops that would make any difference. Putin is deliberately attriting. As you probably know, Marinka has now fallen to the Russians. He has pretty much clean, well, not clean sway to go to the Dnieper, but if he wanted to, he could. His generals probably want him to, but I think probably he's going to hold to this attrition and see what the spring brings. Here we go, seeking up to 500,000.
Right. That came out over the Christmas holiday. Do you foresee any kind of a false flag that would result in American troops being on the ground in Ukraine? I mean, we're already seeing that in Iraq, where American troops are present illegally and against the will of the Iraqi government. And every time they get attacked by anybody, the U.S. attacks somebody else in Iran. Do you see the same thing happening in Ukraine so as to justify Sullivan and Blinken saying to old Joe, you got to send troops there. You'll win the war, you'll beat Putin, and you'll get reelected. I think this is all crazy, but this is the way they think.
Judge, I've always been very concerned that nuclear power plant there in Zaporozhye was vulnerable. Now it's hardened, but it's got this great big pool of contaminated stuff. Okay, some kind of missile would have to hit that, and the whole area would be affected. Now, I have a special guess here, and my guess is that when Zelensky was ordered to come to Washington, it was partly for a one-on-one with the president and with Blinken and with Sullivan, and that their message to him was, don't blow that nuclear power station. Don't blow it. We don't want any black swans. We don't want any false flags. You got that? Because we're not going to defend you if you do that. I think that finally it's sinking in Washington. This guy is completely unpredictable, that he might just do that. And of course, they have the capability of doing that. The Russians can't protect from all the drones and other missiles that the Ukrainians could throw at that Zaporozhye nuclear power center. So that was my major concern. I don't think that the people in the White House are so crazy as to allow that. And I think the one reason why they wanted him one-on-one with no messages or no telephones, tell him, look, we'll be sure to support you, but don't try any of these black swans or false flag attacks. We're on to that. Don't do it.
Got it. Ray McGovern, a pleasure, my dear friend. I know it's a short week. If we have time for the intelligence roundtable on Friday with Larry, it's always a fan favorite, and hopefully you'll be available.
Thank you.
Okay. All the best, my friend. Thank you. So even though this is a short week, we have a lot of your favorites coming up. Tomorrow at 8 in the morning Eastern, Tony Schaefer. At 9 in the morning Eastern, Matt Ho. At 11 in the morning Eastern, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. At 2 in the afternoon Eastern, Scott Horton. At 3 in the afternoon Eastern, Karen Kwiatkowski. At 5 in the afternoon Friday Eastern, the inimitable Max Blumenthal. Judge Napolitano, more as we get it, of course. There's an old one-liner. Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.